Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to do a bit of a book haul, and it is basically all of the books that I've bought since I came back from my holiday last month. I was kind of in two moods today whether or not I should film this haul or if I should film a wrap-up of some of the books that I read before my holiday and the books that I've read since. But honestly, when I was looking at some of those books, I just wasn't really excited to talk about them. So I think I'm actually going to skip out on doing that particular wrap-up. But also that's not going to be too much of a loss, because a lot of the books that I was going to talk about, the ones that I was excited to talk about, were some of these hauled books. There's quite a number of these books that I actually have read since I bought them. Very speedy for me. They've not been lingering on my TBR for too long. Still, a lot of them I haven't read. But like I say, I want to talk about the books that I'm excited about. I might just be me clearing away those other books from the docket. I'm sorry. I think also because it has been more than a month since I went on holiday. It's been maybe even 2 months since I've read some of these books. And I just don't know. The motivation, the incentive to actually talk about them has just dissipated. I'm sure I will probably mention some of these at a later date, but for right now, I'm just gonna clear them away. And instead, I am going to bring you the books that I have bought since I came back from holiday. Woohoo! The very first book that I picked up when I came back off holiday, I went to Leeds because I think I may have mentioned that during my holiday, my laptop charger actually died on me. I'd made a big song and dance about the fact that I wasn't going to do really any work, and I also wasn't going to upload any videos to a lot of my friends and family. I was like, yeah, it's going to be a proper chill time, and I didn't really believe that I was going to actually go through with that. I truly didn't think I was going to go a whole holiday without editing or filming a video or uploading anything. But basically, supernatural forces decided that, yes, Charlotte, you are going to completely step back from your laptop. My screen time, or at least my laptop screen time, phone screen time is a whole different matter, went so down that holiday. So I ended up having to pop to Leeds to go to the Apple store, and whilst I was there, I decided to pick up a book because of course that's what I had to do. And I picked up The Women of Troy by Pat Barker. This is the second book in her little Trojan Women series, the first one being The Silence of the Girls. The Silence of the Girls was a Greek myth retelling that I remember, you know, I kind of liked it. I thought it was okay. I feel like I understood though why a lot of people weren't as enamored with it, especially because of the fact that there is a lot of colloquial modern language being used, but it still intrigued me, and that's why the sequel also made me very interested. I don't know how high my expectations are about this book, but the interest is still there, and it's a great myth retelling and it's about the Trojan War, so of course I'm interested. The next book that I picked up was one that I did not know was coming out until I was in the shop, and that was Clarice Scram by Lauren Child. Now, if you've watched my videos for a little while, you'll know that last year I got very excited when I found out that there was a new Clarice book coming out, because Lauren Child has not written a Clarice book for like a good 10-15 years. This was one of my favourite book series growing up, and she released a little Christmas novelisation about Clarice last year, and I was so excited to read it, and it brought me so much joy. But I had no idea that this next book was coming out, and I think I did a little squeal in the bookshop when I saw it, and I just knew immediately that I had to have it. So this is one that I picked up. I have since read it. This is actually a prequel to the Clarice story that we know and love, and it's actually all about Clarice and her brother and sister and how they came to adopt their dog. So I think it's taking place like a couple of years before the main timeline, I guess. Not that Clarice really has a very extensive timeline, but the character is a bit younger. They actually feel quite a bit younger, and it's just classic Clarice loveliness, and it's beautifully illustrated, gorgeous designs, and you know, inside you've got all of Clarice thoughts just reflected in the typography, in the images. And yeah, this was lovely and let me feel like a kid again. Maybe not quite as much of the love as the Christmas book was for me, but you know, Christmas, it has my name on it. That book felt like it was completely tailor-made for me, but this one was still lovely. The next book that we have is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin. This is a lovely little historical fiction, a bit of a Regency romance, telling the story of Kitty Talbot, who is in rather dire straits. She has 12 weeks to marry somebody who is very wealthy, otherwise she and her sisters are going to get kicked out of their home. Their father has recently died and there are a lot of debts to their name, and so what Kitty needs in order to secure her sister's future is a fortune. And how is she going to get a fortune but by marrying rich? So she decides that she's going to take all of the money that she has to go on her one and only London season in order to find a man. Along the way, she stumbles across a very wealthy family, I believe it's the DeLacy family, who have connections to her younger sister. She meets two of the siblings, a brother and a sister, and decides that the brother is who she is going to target. And what I love about this main character is she is so manipulative, and you completely understand why she has to be this way, but it is delicious to watch. The way that she just hooks this man around her finger and the rest of the family. I say the rest of the family. Actually, there is an older brother who has not been in the picture. He's been off fighting in the wars, and he's been spending his time kind of recuperating and also like mentally recuperating. He doesn't really want to be involved in the London season, but he is quickly called back to London when he hears that his brother has gotten himself entangled with this girl, who initially the mother just suspects is a bit of a gold digger, which of course she is. Kitty is a bit of a gold digger. By the time this older brother, Lord Radcliffe, actually does come to town, it seems like his mother has also been enchanted by Kitty. But Lord Radcliffe is not quite so sure. He is determined that he's going to get to the bottom of it, and he's going to suss out this Kitty Talbot. And I think you know what happens next. It's basically, if you've seen Bridgerton season 2, it is basically that with the genders swapped. Instead of older sister falling in love with the man that her younger sister is meant to marry, you've got the older brother falling in love with the woman that his younger brother was going to marry. As you can tell, I have read this already, and I really, really enjoyed this. I think, like I say, what I liked the most about this was this main character. I felt like she was really complex, really layered. She was definitely manipulative, but very sympathetic at the same time. And it was just very fun to be back in this Regency world. Next up, we have You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. And isn't this just a stunning cover? And what I love most about this is the spine. Like, look at that spine. Beautiful. This is about another very, very messy romance. So we meet the main character of Faye, who is, I believe, only 29, but she has been a widow for the past, I think, 5 years. And she is obviously very much still grieving her husband, very much still reeling from this. And she has decided that she is going to get her life back on track and go out and find love again. We see her get involved with a guy called Milan. In fact, as soon as you meet her in this book, she is having sex with him. Very quickly, she realizes that it's not really going to work out with Milan, especially when she becomes very attracted to his friend, Nazir. He just seems like a much more perfect guy for her. They're taking things very, very slow, but it's clear that he is definitely falling for her, and he invites her to go back home with him, partly so that Faye can exhibit her work with this big name curator, but also so that she can meet his family. Faye's really excited about this opportunity. She flies out with Nazir. She meets his father, who it turns out is this very famous celebrity chef, Aline Blake. However, things start to take a turn as she realizes that, oh no, she is very, very attracted to this man's father. And it is incredibly messy. Incredibly messy. This is my very first Akwaeke Emezi book that I've read, and it went on so many ups and downs, and like to the extent that I am still not quite sure how I feel about it. I feel like it was really well done, but also I am not really happy with the ending. I'm not really happy with the romance between the father and Faye. I'm just like, is this really the best that you could do? But there are so many things that I really enjoyed about this. And also I would quite like to do a video all about the different books that this book reminded me of. They were just, I feel like I was well placed to read this because of other things that I've read recently. So I don't know. It's really good. I really feel like other people should read it, and I'd love to hear more people's thoughts about this because, oh, such an interesting book. On a different tact, a romance that I know what my feelings were about it. And I'm kind of laughing to show you this cover because I have read my first Tessa Dare book. I've been slowly getting my way into romance, and I've been reading a bit of historical romance. So eventually I would have to hit upon some Tessa Dare and some of these mass market paperbacks of romance books, which have a half-naked man on the cover, because of course they do. Of course I'd end up here. This is When a Scot Ties the Knot by Tessa Dare, and this was delightful. You know what I did with this? I read it, and then I went back and I read it again because I was enjoying it so much I didn't want it to end. This has a delightfully silly premise, and it's just great. It's just great. And every time that I tell people what this is about, they're like, oh wait, I actually want to read that now. So I'm going to bring that to you. So we have our main character of Madeline Gracechurch. She is an introvert on a completely other plane of introversion. She has very severe social anxiety. She does not like being in crowds, and so the prospect of having to go through a London season absolutely terrifies her. She just wants to be able to sit at home sketching insects because that is an interest of hers. She really likes doing nature drawing, particularly of animals and their habits, which I thought was a really, really fun little tidbit about her personality and what she likes to get up to. And it does play a part in the plot later on. So she does what any person would do when confronted with this kind of prospect. She decides to make up a fake fiance. Her London season is happening just after she goes to Brighton on her own. And when she comes back from Brighton, she tells her family that she is actually engaged to a Scottish captain of the army, no less, Captain Logan Mackenzie. She comes up with any name that she can think of. She tells her family that the reason that they've not been able to meet him is because he is obviously off fighting and he doesn't have any family, so therefore her family cannot meet his family. She basically crafts like the perfect man for herself. But because she has to keep this ruse going, she starts writing and posting letters, very, very intimate, very personal letters from herself to this fictional Logan Mackenzie. And she does actually physically post them, but she's very much thinking that it's just going to end up being dumped somewhere. Like, there isn't a Captain Logan Mackenzie. These letters will just end up being thrown in a bin somewhere. The army aren't going to deal with them. And her family are really, really happy for her. In fact, one of her relatives even leaves her a castle in Scotland in his will. But eventually, a few years down the line, she decides enough is enough. She has to put an end to this charade, and she basically kills off her fictional Captain Logan Mackenzie. She gives him a heroic death, but she decides to send one final letter saying, I'm sorry, but I've got to stop this now. And she is basically able to play this off to her family as her being a widower now. And so she can still keep up this thing of nobody has to ask her to go to a London season, nobody's going to ask her to put herself on the market for people. And so eventually she does inherit this Scottish castle, and she and her eccentric aunt go and live there for a few years, just happily pottering about being their eccentric selves. However, our story kicks off. Our story begins when one day Madeleine is told that she has a visitor. She comes to see this stranger, and it is this very tall, very handsome army captain. Hello dear, I'm Captain Logan Mackenzie. All of your letters that you wrote have been coming to me. I have read all of these letters, and guess what? We are getting married. Basically, this actual very, very real Captain Logan Mackenzie, upon discovering that this woman who has been sending him these letters has got this land, this Scottish castle and this land, he's kind of decided to himself, okay, well, I have a group of soldiers that I was looking after that now no longer have homes as a result of being away in the wars for so long that their family have either dispersed or have died as a result of the Highland clearances. A lot of these men no longer have homes to go back to because the English were terrible to the Scottish. I don't know if that ever needs reminding, it's just a general given. And he's thinking to himself, well, if I marry this woman, then there is going to be this massive patch of land that I can give to my soldiers. And he basically says to her, if you don't agree to this, then I will send all of the letters that you gave me to the London gossip columns. And in those letters, she sent like very personal, private thoughts of hers. These were basically like diary entries that she thought no one was going to read. So it is a marriage of blackmail, but you know, it's an understandable one. I do understand his motives. But oh no, as soon as they lock eyes upon each other, they realise that the other person kind of hot. They realise that they are very attracted to each other, but no, we have to keep this pretense going of this is a blackmail marriage, at least between themselves. Everybody else is meant to believe that they are truly a couple in love, but they between themselves are in this conflict because they are falling for each other, but they're trying to keep up an arrangement that is based upon blackmail. And I don't know, it shouldn't work for me, but it did. And I think it was just because both of these characters are so charming, they very clearly have this chemistry, they're very clearly attracted to each other right from the off, that you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, why can't you just admit this? And then you can have this like lovely relationship that you've always wanted. I think these two just don't think that they are destined to have happiness, but it's okay because it's a romance and eventually they do get there. They do get there. And it was just joyful. It was just such a good little pick-me-up. I actually recommended this to my housemate who is a Bridgerton lover and who loves a bit of historical romance. And she sped through this too. And she has since actually read another Tessa Dare book. So she's beating me already. But no, this was lovely. This was great. I really enjoyed this. Next up, any excuse to buy a book. I had to go to the dentist. I had a hygienist and a normal dentist appointment. And you know, what do you do to treat yourself after going through such a thing? Then buy yourself a book at the nearest bookshop. That's what I did. I picked up We Had to Remove This Post by Hannah Bervowitz, translated by Emma Rold. This was originally written in Dutch, I believe, but it was translated into English earlier this year. This is basically a story from the perspective of somebody who is a content moderator on a like TikTok-esque platform. Somebody whose job is to go through all of the like absolutely horrific things that people do post on social media platforms, and you have to make the decision as to whether or not it does break the rules of the social media platform of choice. And it's going into like what this does to your mind to have to see all of these horrible things day in, day out, and also how it kind of numbs you to it and the things that social media websites will let you post because it technically coincides with their rules and what they will not, and how thin that line really is. This is very dark and disturbing, and I was very glad that it was short. I think it's a really interesting book, though, you know, it's not my typical read, and I think there are other people who are more suited to this than me, but definitely interesting. Next up, we have two books in the same same series, though you're going to be questioning why I bought them in the order that I did, and that is two of the books in the Six Tudor Queens series by Alison Weir, Anne Boleyn and Katharine Parr, 2 and 6. Why on earth did I do that? Well, because I already did have 1, 3 and 4, and I didn't have 2 and 6. Basically, all I need now is the Catherine Howard book, and I've completed my set. But before I went on holiday, I actually finished Catherine of Aragon. Really enjoyed the experience of reading that, and so I wanted to move straight on to Anne Boleyn, but I didn't have a copy, so I did buy one for myself. I found 3 and 4 in a charity shop, and then I picked up 6 because it was just there. It was just there. No rhyme or reason. I just wanted to complete my set, or I should say I wanted to continue on with my set. Once I have book 5, I will have completed my set. So yeah, very soon we'll probably be reading Anne Boleyn. I am a little nervous about what Alison Weir's take is going to be on Anne Boleyn, because I hear that she isn't really an Anne Boleyn fan, at least from people who have read her non-fiction on the Six Wives. I remember reading The Lady in the Tower, which was all about like the last year of Anne Boleyn's life, and feeling like she was fairly even-handed and she seemed to give Anne a fair shake. But maybe when she's comparing her to Catherine of Aragon, maybe she doesn't give her the most sympathetic glance. I don't know, but we will see how we get on with this. And eventually down the line I'll read this. The same day that I picked up Catherine Parr, I also picked up The Time Traveller's Guide to Regency Britain by Ian Mortimer. This one has been a long time coming. I'd been waiting for the paperback of this to come out, and I don't know why I just resisted picking it up after that. I've read all of the other Time Traveller's Guide books, but I think it's one of those that you always think, I will eventually come to that, and I, you know, just that day decided now is going to be the day. I really enjoy the Time Traveller's Guide series. They go through medieval England, Elizabethan England, Restoration Britain, and now Regency Britain, and going through what it was like in the day-to-day lives of these people in these times. Going through like what people wore, what they ate, how they slept, what the population, what the landscape was. It's very much with this idea of you can never really truly immerse yourself into a time period without really immersing yourself in that time period. And yeah, I really like them as introductions to different time periods, so I'm sure I will enjoy this. And then the other book that I picked up on that day was The Case of the Married Woman, Caroline Norton, a 19th century heroine who wanted justice for women by Antonia Fraser. This is now the 4th book that I have of Antonia Fraser's that I have not yet read, but this is one that I've been wanting to read for quite a while, but it's been in hardback for about 1.5 years now, and I don't feel like it's coming into paperback anytime soon, though watch it come into paperback as soon as I say that. I feel like it might have even been 2020 when the hardback came out, so like what gives publishers? But I remember learning about Caroline Norton like very briefly during my A-levels when I was doing about the suffrage movement. Kind of to give context for it, we were taught about like what life was like for Victorian women, and particularly their rights, which was, spoiler alert, not a lot, especially when it came to marriage and divorce. You know, this was very much a time where if a woman was to leave her husband, she would have no rights to anything, including her children. Children were seen as exclusively the property of the husband. And if the husband did so decide that he wanted his wife to have nothing to do with his children until they turned 18, he could do that. And that was exactly what happened to Caroline Norton. She had quite a scandalous affair, or at least an alleged affair. I can't remember if it actually was an affair, with Lord Melbourne. And so her husband brought Lord Melbourne to court and decided to sue for divorce of his wife. And as a result of this proceeding, as a result of this estrangement, he did not allow her access to her 3 children. And basically Caroline Norton was like, I'm not having that. And her case pushing for her right as a mother was this very landmark campaign in the rights of women, but pre the suffrage movement. So I am very excited to read this. And then finally, one of the most exciting things that I got was a review copy from a publisher. I mean, not to make it sound too impressive, because I did actually request this book. It wasn't like they just sent it to me. But this is a book that is actually on my most anticipated books of July to September video. And in fact, I think it was the very first book that I spoke about, which was Joan by Katharine J. Chen. I am so excited to have this book in my life and to have it pre-publication too. Oh, just look how stunning this is. So this is historical fiction once again, focusing on the life of Joan of Arc, who is a figure that I have briefly touched on in my studies but never really delved into very intensely. I feel like there's a lot of her life that is a bit of a blind spot for me, and so I was so excited to see that this was coming out. And for some reason, I don't know if it's the marketing, I don't know if it's like the cover design, it reminds me a lot of Cecily by Annie Garthwaite, and I loved Cecily. So somehow something in my brain decides that these are very similar. Though actually thinking about that, I do believe that Cecily by Annie Garthwaite begins with the execution of Joan of Arc. I think that is right. So that's probably where I'm getting that from. Ah, and in fact, Annie Garthwaite has a quote on the back. She says it's an electrifying, creative leap, vivid and compelling. A triumph! And yeah, I'm just so excited to have this and to delve into it, and you will definitely be hearing my thoughts about this very soon. So there we go, those are all of the books that I have bought since I came back from holiday. Every time that I come back from holiday or, you know, begin a new year or anything like that, I say that I'm going to stop buying books, and do I? No. But it's okay as long as I'm excited about them. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken about today, or if you were excited about me potentially reading them, any that you've got your eye on. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.